Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's meeting of the Children and Families Overview and Scrutiny Committee. First item on the agenda is the appointment of chairman. Mrs. Fryer was nominated as chairman-elect at the County Council meeting held on the 15th of May. Can I please ask for a nomination and a seconder?
Nominate Mrs. Fryer.
Thank you. Mrs. Fryer, over to you.
Thank you very much, and I might very much appreciate your endorsement. Right, we now move on to the, I welcome everybody to the meeting, and as usual, the meeting is being broadcast live via the County Council's website, and it will be available for viewing after the meeting. Can I please ask that all members and officers have their microphone on mute until they wish or are invited to speak. I have received apologies from Mrs. Gattatoria, Canon Lewis and Mr. Smith today. Mrs. Seaton is here as substitute for Mr. Gattatoria. And now this is not quite normal, but I'm sure all members of the committee are aware that we are currently in the pre-election period, heightened sensitivity running up to the general election, and will take particular care in any debate this afternoon. I'll now move on to item 2, the appointment of the deputy chairman. I will ask for nominations, please. Mr.
Hill, thank you.
Thank you very much. So Mr. Hill is the deputy chair. The next item is the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of March, pages 5 to 10 on your agenda. I move that these are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Agreed? Thank you. Item 4, I have received no questions from members of the public. Item 5, questions asked by members under Standing Order 7.3 and 7.5. I have received a question from Mrs. Jordan today. I would like to remind members that no discussion is to be held on this. Question and its response have been circulated to members of the committee prior to the start of the meeting and will be taken as read. Mrs. Jordan, do you have a supplementary question? Thank you.
I just wanted to ask about the surveys that the chairman's talking about. When are the replies expected into the surveys, and what would happen going forward from that? Thank you.
I'll have to come back to Mrs. Jordan on that. I don't know the answer myself, but I can speak to the service and come back to you.
To item 6, I have no urgent items. Declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda. Do any members have any interest that they wish to declare? No, thank you. Item 8, declarations of party whip. I don't think we have any declarations of the party whip. Item 9, I've received no petitions. Therefore, we move on to the first substantive item, which is a report on children in care and care leavers. This commences on page 11 of your agenda. I invite, who's starting? Sharon Cook, Ms. Cook. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The report provided for the committee is to give an overview of the local authority's duties and responsibilities to all children in our care and care leavers, so those previously looked after children and young people. The report outlines our statutory duties, the progress that we've achieved against our development plan and our areas for future development. So paragraph 2 to 5 gives the committee an overview of the statutory framework in which we work and sets out our duties and responsibilities under the Children Act 1989. The Children and Social Work Act 2017 and the Care Leavers legislation. I would also draw the committee's attention to our corporate parenting strategy 2022 to 25 that has previously been endorsed by this committee and gives the overview of our ambitions for our children in care and care leavers. And at a meeting of the County Council on the 21st of February this year, it was agreed that care experienced young people would be treated as a protected characteristic. Moving on the report, so paragraph 6 onwards gives a background of the number of children in our care and care leavers. So as of the 8th of May, there were 723 children in care and 652 care leavers aged 18 to 25 who received support from us. This includes children, it includes unaccompanied asylum seeking children. Paragraph 7 outlines in detail our promise to children in care and care leavers and sets out the clear ambitions and aims that we have to provide for our children and young people. Moving on, the report, detail is given in paragraph 8 around the outcome of a focused visit from Ofsted, specifically looking at this group of children and our services to them that took place in May of last year. We then work on to that in paragraph 10, we've recently or earlier this year launched our next version of our continuous improvement plan, which is called Achieving Excellence Through Purposeful Practice. That plan runs from 2024 to 27 and outlines our behaviours and values and our aspirations for our children and young people. So I'll now hand over to Kelda. Kelda Clare's the head of service, and Kelda will take you through some of the details within the remaining report, and then we're happy to answer any questions.
Hello, thank you very much. So as the report continues, the first section is in relation to children in care. And rather than going through lots of the compliance elements that we work on, I've highlighted the key areas of development that are part of our plan going forward. A key area is around permanence, and this was highlighted very much in our 2019 Ofsted inspection, and we've done an awful lot of development work in relation to this. The first point is in relation to emotional permanence for children who have a long-term care plan of fostering, and this focuses on matching permanence for children within their foster homes. We are identifying that this is their home, this is where they have a sense of belonging, and it's a sense of enduring belonging. So we're not talking about that they belong now, but they will belong throughout their childhood and to adulthood. And we're making real progress against identifying our children, having a very robust process in managing that and agreeing and identifying support plans that are needed to support those foster families to maintain that sense of belonging for our children. Another significant area of work that we've continued to develop has been around developing special guardianship orders. You will have had a lot of information in relation to our work with Newton Europe, and these were two defining programmes that were taken forward. One was from making the right decision at the right time, so identifying special guardianship orders from early on in care planning for children. And the second pathway was in relation to looking at conversions of those that have a long-term fostering care plan to considering whether their foster carers, be that kinship carers or be that mainstream, could consider taking out a special guardianship order, which means that the local authority no longer hold parental responsibility for that child. That child would no longer be looked after. And in the right circumstances, when this is right for children, that is the plan that we're really progressing. So there's been significant progress within that, and you'll see within the report a number of details in terms of data in relation to that. A further area of work has been life story work, and this is about a child really understanding their experiences before care, in care, and the decisions that have been made for them. And we look at there being quite visual life story work for much younger children, and what we're now calling moving forward letters for young people and young adults that are moving into becoming into the care leaving service to fully understand the decisions that have been made in relation to them. Rehabilitation home, and this relates to our SGO assessment team that was developed to progress conversions, and they now focus on children who are placed with their parents but still remain subject to a full care order. So they're placed with their parents under a regulation called placement with parents, and continue to be a looked after child. And we work with the families and their networks to progress revocation of their care order, again, when this is right for the children. So this is a really big piece of work to be making the right planning decisions for children at the right time and getting the right outcomes for them. In relation to care leavers, there's been a significant piece of work on our care leaver offer. Sharon mentioned the being care experienced children and young people being identified as a protected characteristic, which is the beginning of that work. So there's further work to be done in terms of we've got that identified. What does that now mean, and how will we measure that impact? And in addition to that, we've extended our offer of support for council tax. Up to this point, it has been agreed for those within Leicestershire, and we've since agreed that all our children will have equity. So those living outside of Leicestershire will also have support towards their council tax, as a good parent would do, as we are corporate parents to all of our children and care leavers. We have a really robust offer and process in relation to our children who present with high risk and vulnerable care leavers, and that can be those who are presenting high risk behaviours, but also those that are potentially in custody or leaving custody. So there's a lot of multi-agency working to ensure we have the right support available for our children should they be leaving prison or should be presenting complex needs. And this work engages with our young adults team and our adults team, depending on the age of our children. And we also, since 2017, have had a duty to provide an offer of support to all of our children up to the age of 25. And the progress of work we're doing is how do we connect with our children that have no longer got an allocated worker? How do we ensure that they understand the care leaver offer in total? And how do we ensure that they know that we are their corporate parent, that they can return and they can seek support, whether that is for time limited or longer periods of time when it's required. And further to that, this year we have signed the housing protocol for care leavers, which is a really good opportunity. All the 7 district councils have signed up to this. We've had our launch, and this is very much about working together to ensure we have consistency for all of our children in all of the 7 districts, and that they are receiving the right housing support, both from ourselves and from our housing colleagues. And in relation to the voice of our care leavers, we've had supporting our young people after care, which we identify as SIPAC, for many years, and it's absolutely been developing and growing. And in the last 12 months, we developed the Aftercare Council, which is for the older cohort of children once they become 18, which moves on from the Children in Care Council. And this very much is about identifying a space for our children to be part of consultation and development going forward, because it's critical that our decisions and our policies and procedures impact on them, that they have a role and responsibility in developing those pieces of work. So they're the key areas that I've identified for you, if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Taylor, did you want to come back at this point?
Just very quickly before there's any questions, this is about the care leaver offer. I mean, Kelda's just run through that really quickly, but the work that's gone into that is absolutely huge with the districts. The council tax and the housing protocol has been absolutely huge piece of work. As I'm sure you're all aware, the work with districts can be, when you're dealing with 7 different districts, trying to get them all to agree to the same thing is extremely difficult. So I know Kelda very rushed over it, but there's a huge amount of work that's gone on, and we're really proud of that offer for our care leavers. So I just wanted to highlight that a little bit.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, thanks to yourself and the other officers involved in working through this. We are lay people in this, and whatever amount of care we can, present is nothing to the work that you do. So many thanks, for this. Just got a couple of things. The short, quick one is the voice of children in care or from care. It's heard in some quarters, notably yourselves, but I don't think members themselves have that proximity, if you like. And it would, speaking as someone who has worked with someone who did very well, but after a very difficult, challenging childhood, I think it's really valuable to hear that voice from members, full members. The other question, Chair, is a sort of broader one, in that I was quite impressed by what was said about the McAllister report on social care, which was about more than a year ago now. What I heard partly was that it was very expensive to do and we hadn't got the money. But apart from that, there were lots of developments in the service that were recommended. And I just wondered, I noticed what you're saying about guardianship, and that seemed to chime a bit with McAllister. I just wondered if you could say a few words about how that report, which is a major independent report, national, informs what you've done. Big question, but if you'd like to say something about that, that'd be good.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hunt. And I'll start, and I'm sure Kelda will add detail. Just in relation to voice, obviously we would welcome and be able to work with members if there is more we can do about making sure that our voice of children in care and care leavers is heard. So would be more than happy to look at that. Do want to say that as well as Mrs. Taylor as our lead member, co-chairing our corporate parenting board and ensuring that because young people attend that board that she hears their voice. We do have 3 member champions who were identified, who are 3 members who work with us, particularly around some key areas of development for our children in care and care leavers. So they are a vehicle to hear that voice, but more than happy to hear and discuss and think about how we can do more of that. In relation to stable homes built on love, which is the big piece of government-led research and review of children's social care, as a department as a whole, we have spent the last 12 plus months looking very carefully at that report and looking at that in relation to the needs of children and young people in Leicestershire. And outside of children in care parts of the service, we have moved forward some key areas of development that put us in line with that report. In relation to children in care and care leavers, it's very much around being that lifelong parent for those children, looking at stability, looking at loving homes, looking at how we build those networks to support children in care and care leavers. So we were really pleased when we saw those elements of the report, that there were things that we had been striving to achieve in Leicestershire for some time, but we have utilised the research from those reports to actually review what we deliver and how we can improve our services. And part of that, you've already heard around our care leavers, protected characteristics, but the work of that enduring belonging and making sure that children have that sound and secure home base where they feel loved and feel safe is fundamental to the work that we do in the service. Do you want to say anything?
Okay, Mr. Hunt. Thank you. Any else got any points to raise?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. C.
Thank you. I'm just going down to point 35 on the performance data care levers. And the care levers in employment, education and training is shockingly low, only because the other ones are high. So in contrast, it makes it look low. Could you give me some sort of fill that in of why it is or does appear to be so low? Thank you.
I suppose it's also referencing it in context to other outstanding authorities, and in terms of against other authorities, it very much is it's a good figure. So we're quite high in relation to other authorities that we kind of compare and contrast ourselves to. In terms of the work that we do, we recognise that our children have experienced significant trauma in their early years, and quite often that takes a period of time about engagement in education. And how that is managed, which is where our virtual school come in the support that they offer for our children. Yes. So yeah, but they will have experienced that throughout, long periods throughout their lives, and it's about ensuring that we engage with them to access the right level of either employment, training opportunities, or education opportunities. We do have an increasing number attending higher education and university, which is fantastic to see. And we're developing our apprenticeship models to try and ensure that we can support our children in the right environment where they receive the right support while they are in employment. We strive for that to be higher. I'm not suggesting we're happy where that is, but we also recognise the complexities for our children and what that looks like for them. But I think the importance of supporting our children up to the age of 25 is really significant to enable us to continue to offer levels of support around those areas to continue to engage them and support them.
Thank you very much for that. So if we were to combine looked after children and care leavers not in employment, education or training, I would be interested to know which ones at a younger age were being, I'm going to say being failed by the system and not reaching their full potential. I don't necessarily mean that, but you understand. And the ones that are not in education or training now, which whether the secondary school, the primary school and that influenced what they are now, and reflected where the position. I'm not really doing this. I want comparison between who was failing the school system or the school system was failing them to the ones that are being failed now. Do you understand? Sort of. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. Yeah, no, I think it's a really good question. I think it's a really important question, isn't it? Around, I guess the simple question is how many of those young people, care leavers, who are out of education, weren't in education as a child, and how do we know? I think so. We're not. It's not a question we can answer in terms of tracking them through. What we can be confident in knowing is that we do track young people individually. So all of our social workers, our PAs, our virtual school have a really good eye. What we need to understand around the care leavers figure is it is a moment in time figure. It's based on a smaller cohort of children, so that we have less care leaver numbers than we do children in care for whom we're responsible. But also it's a moment in time, so it could well be that the care leavers who are not in education could well have been fine in secondary school and could have been engaged or could have been, getting on as well as we would hope they could be. But actually, as they become a care leaver, for whatever reason, they're either not ready to engage in education, they're not ready to take up a job. It is a moment in time figure as well. So it could be that they're kind of waiting for employment. It could be that, as a result of the areas that Kelda said, they're not ready to be starting employment or they're not ready to engage in education. So there's a whole variety of reasons. we don't tend that figure. It does look stark against the other figures in terms of suitable accommodation, all of those kind of things. And part of that is because it is a moment in time figure, as well as all of the other reasons that Kelda's given around the kind of ability for individuals to engage in employment education. The important bit is we know who those children are, or young people are, and we know what the plan is for them, or we know why they're not engaged in employment education. And we will know the trajectory for those young people as well, as in, you know, is it going to be another couple of years before they're ready? Is it that they're waiting for a job offer? Is it that they're going through, you know, kind of some therapeutic intervention before they can engage? So the important bit is us being confident we know what's happening with each of those individuals. But there will equally, as you've pointed out, be some patterns where children have consistently not engaged with education for whatever reason, and that we will continue to support them for what works best for them.
Thank you. Before I move to Mr. Frisbee, these figures, they do include the unaccompanied asylum seekers. So we don't know how many of those unaccompanied asylum seekers, when I say we, I mean the committee don't know, that out of that 62.6%, because I understand, I think we're having more unaccompanied asylum seekers that would fall into that age bracket than we do from other, you know, our children that are born and bred in Leicestershire or England. So, and then I'll move to Mr. Frisbee, but Jane.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So we know that a large proportion of our care leavers are those children, young people who came to us seeking asylum. However, we would have the same aspiration for those care leavers to be in education, employment and training. But yes, we can. We know that a large proportion of that 60-odd% are young people who came to us seeking asylum, and we have those responsibilities. But we would have the same aspiration.
Mr. Frisbee.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, I'd like to thank Kelda and her team for a robust report that's very, very good. I've been in dialogues with Terry Galloway myself. I know Terry very, very well, and we've worked on projects. And I think it's worth recording rather as a question as a statement that in the service we provide, a career service, there's no consistency with care leavers. It's very difficult to pin down. You spoke about algorithmic patterns. It's very, very difficult to kind of pin down one, if you like, one through line through them all. So I think this is an admirable piece of work, considering with all the variables that you have to deal with, because no two care leavers have ever presented to us with matching stories. So I think it's a noble. I think it should be put on record that the fact that you are tracking that data so robustly is admirable and noble. And I'd like to thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Any more comments? Nobody? Matt, on anything? Happy. Thank you, Kelda. And thank you very much. Right. We move on to our next item, item 11, page 25 to 50 on your agenda pack, and that is it's a presentation on the family hubs in Leicestershire, 1 year on after ours. So who's leading on this? I understand, is it Sharon and Ellie?
Hello.
Yeah, so you were starting, Sharon, and then we moved to you. Will welcome, Ellie. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, for come on there. Yes, so as way of introduction for the committee, this is a report that we brought to the committee at the start of our Family Hubs programme, a paper outlining the work that we hoped to do and our ambitions, and this is a report to come back to say a year on what's been achieved by the service, working to put and establish family hubs and the services that work from those family hubs in place. So the report outlines some of that background that I've just explained, and then in paragraph 5 outlines for you the funding. So the government provided some additional different pots of money, so different amounts of funding to certain authorities based on application and a process, a bid process. We didn't receive in Leicestershire the higher amount of funding, but we were fortunate to be in the second roll of authorities, 12 councils, where we did receive just under £1 million of money that was enabled us to put in place a project to pull together and put in place our vision for family hubs. So that work has continued over the 12 months, and Helly is here as the lead officer for this area of work to provide for the committee more detail on the achievements of family hubs. And then we'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So as Sharon has mentioned, we're just over 1 year on from the start of the Family Hubs programme in Leicestershire. Sorry, just having a small technical issue. So just a quick recap for you on what family hubs are. So as Sharon has said, we've received just under £1 million, and we were one of 12 councils nationally to receive the funding pot that we bid into. The other 75 local authorities to receive funding did so on the basis of indices of deprivation. So that wasn't a bidding round that we could apply for. So a reminder of what family hubs are. I think the description one-stop shop sums it up quite nicely. It's a place where all families with children and young people from 0 to 19 or up to 25 young people with special educational needs or disabilities can access information, advice, and where it's needed, support. But it's really important also to remember that hubs are a mixture of physical spaces, but they're also virtual spaces. And it's also about our partnership and our outreach. So it's no one thing, but it's all of those things together. And what we wanted to do with the funding we received, as Sharon's mentioned, it was very much about infrastructure money. So we've had the opportunity to have some additional staffing just to help us really set up family hubs, do the partnership working, create the website, relaunch some of our buildings. We had a very small capital pot within the funding. It wasn't sufficient to buy buildings, but we have been able to do some work on our existing buildings and refurnish and buy particular resources that were needed. The infographic just helps to describe that. So it's about working with libraries, because we recognise that quite early on that families told us that they were seeking information, would often use the internet as their first port of call, but sometimes they would not have credit to be able to search on the internet or wouldn't have the mobile data, and libraries performed that service for them. People are able to access computers there or to use the Wi-Fi, but also libraries are quite non-threatening, non-stigmatising places where families can go. As I've mentioned, we've done work on the website, and I'll go on to tell you a little bit more about that. But really at the heart of our family hubs is the partnership work that we've been doing, and I'm happy to share some examples with you as we go through. So just again, a bit of an overview. So Family Hubs is part of a national programme, but it's very closely aligned to 3 other national programmes which we participate in Leicestershire. So reducing parental conflict is actually a DWP, Department of Works and Pensions funded programme. And it's all about raising awareness of the impact that parental conflict can have on children. It's very different to domestic abuse. It's not the same thing at all, but it's about frequent and unresolved conflict in families. So arguing, and arguing which is not resolved and which has an impact on the children. It can be frightening, it can be scary. And some of the impacts that we see to children are very similar to witnessing domestic abuse. So we've been working on that programme for a few years now, but it's very much aligned to our Family Hubs work. Supporting Families is now in its 11th year, starting off as Troubled Families back in 2013. And that is the provision of targeted support to families with multiple and complex issues. So our Family Hubs and Supporting Families are obviously very closely aligned, and Family Hubs are spaces in which some of the services are delivered. Although Family Hubs is about 0 to 19, Start for Life is one aspect of Family Hubs, and that's the focus on the first 2 years of a child's life, recognising the importance of 1001 critical days. that very early period when baby's brain is developing at an incredible rate, and how important it is to have supportive measures in place for families who need them. So we've had work underway under that heading as well. So some of our key achievements, I have such a huge number of photographs. I had hoped I would be able to present a few more to you in a short video, but that wasn't available. So there's just a small selection. We decided to go with branding for family hubs so that it's something that the public can recognise. So that was developed very early on, and we've relaunched our 21 buildings as family hubs around the county. At each of those events, we took the opportunity to invite in members of the public and families, and also partner agencies, and they've all turned out to be very good networking events and opportunities for families to understand what's on offer. We have now got 16 family hubs within libraries around the county, within county council libraries, and again had some very well attended events. Also during the year, we've held 2 partnership conferences. So the first was in June last year, and more recently we had one in March. And we've also supported 2 early years conferences, talking to early years settings, childminders, nurseries, playgroups, about family hubs and about the additional support and services that we can offer any families they know who may be struggling. The next infographic is really about the vision of integration for family hubs, placing families at the centre and acknowledging that most families will receive their support from their immediate community, whether that's families or friends, and whether it's through online support. And then branching out, thinking about some of the universal services that are available, such as schools and GPs, health provision, post-16 and so on, and going on to acute and targeted services. So over the year, we've been very careful to map the agencies that we've talked to and the organisations and community groups to really help develop that picture in each of our localities. And it has been a really fascinating and interesting year. We've met with the Rural Community Council to talk about their outreach that they do and how they might be able to share some of our hub's messages. Obviously, we've talked to libraries about the use of the library bus. We've also talked to the district and borough councils. So in Melton, with their outreach programme to some of the villages around food distribution, thinking about how we can share some of the family hub messages. We've talked to Leicestershire Mind. I could go on. We've talked to hundreds of organisations and created connections that we didn't have before. This next one is just really emphasising all the different organisations we've talked to, but who we now have delivering from our buildings across Leicestershire. So what we really wanted to achieve was for families. Families tell us that our buildings are places that they feel safe and that they feel able to access without any worries. And we wanted to extend that to some of our partners. So we now in most buildings have midwifery and health visiting clinics running. But we've extended that to include services like housing support. So the Bridge delivers drop-in sessions. We have, it was Vitaminds at the time I wrote this, the adult talking therapies service, Healthy Together, I think I've mentioned, Women's Aid running groups from buildings. So they're not all running from all 21 buildings, but we are trying to integrate our delivery and make it connected in communities because it helps families to access and feel safe, and it feels much better going to one building for your services rather than several. So over the year, we had 2 seconded community engagement workers. We wanted to particularly focus some work on young people. So we're very conscious that the buildings we have are very much geared up to younger children, and we wanted to test out how young people would feel about coming to some of our spaces. So we've done an awful lot of work on that. We've had some art projects involved, some graffiti artists, some canvas work, all things that young people said would make the buildings feel more acceptable to them. And we've had amazing feedback from young people on that. They've also been very involved in developing our Family Hub's website and the content on there for young people. We've also met lots of grandparents, aunts and uncles, and our community engagement workers, as well as holding events, meeting other organisations, have been out and about literally in parks and in community spots all around the county, meeting families to make sure that we understand how they want to receive information, advice and support. We did an online survey and received over 100 responses back from families, which we were really pleased with, and we've been able to act on the information that they shared with us about how they would like to access information. And we hope to repeat that again towards the end of the year. At our last conference, we produced a book of partnership pledges. So these were pledges from all of the organisations attending, the individuals, about how they would support and help further embed family hubs across our partnership. And that's something that we're going to be reviewing at our 6-month point in September. Just going back to reducing parental conflict, so this has been a really successful programme for us in Leicestershire. We were meeting with the DWP this morning to review our progress, and in most areas of the assessment that we have to do with them each year, they found us to be a, as they described it, mature local authority in the way that we were working. Since doing this report, we've actually now trained over 600 professionals and volunteers in a practitioners toolkit. So the toolkit was developed for Leicestershire practitioners who told us that they often felt uncomfortable asking parents about the quality of their relationship and whether they were having arguments and whether they felt that was having an impact. So we worked with a company of experts to produce the toolkit, and as I say, we've now trained huge numbers of people right across our wider early help partnership. So GPs, over 80 schools have been trained, all of our practitioners, social workers, people in the voluntary sector, housing officers, antisocial behaviour, police officers. I could go on. It's an impressive list, and we're very proud of what we've achieved with that programme. We still have more work to do. We have a core development group, which is a partnership group that oversees the work that we do on RPC, and they report into our early help partnership, who in turn report into the Children and Families Partnership. And we have really good representation from key partners such as the Violence Reduction Network, Public Health, Education, the district councils, and our colleagues in the voluntary sector. Last year, we also published a document called Relationships Matter in Leicestershire, which was bringing together of our vision for our relational practice, but also how we want to support families in developing healthy relationships as one of the foundation things that we should do in all family work. Just moving on to the Family Hub's website, I'm just going to take you briefly through some of the content so that you get an idea, but I would encourage you to have a look at the website if you're able to, and we welcome feedback all of the time. There's an email address on there for you to do that. So the Family Hub's website has 4 main areas. So it's information focused for parents and carers, young people, professionals and volunteers. This is an example of the areas that we cover in the parents and carers. So we go from pregnancy and new babies start for life through to things like sexuality and gender, family health, mental health, money, housing and employment, special educational needs. They're all areas that families have told us they want to be able to access information on. And it's a combination of us generating some content, but also making sure that we have links to existing information because we didn't want to reinvent what was already out there. We also have a What's On section on the front of our Family Hub's website, showing all the events that are available to families. They can search by area, they can look and see what's going on for them. So things like stay and plays, community fridges. We've also linked to the Joy app, which I'm sure you're aware of. It's just a health funded approach to people being able to find self-help and support. Another area of work, which is perhaps slightly more in the early stages, is around workforce development. This is a joint piece of work across Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland, and it's looking at a competency framework for our wider early help workforce. We're also linking in with the Safeguarding Partnership to look about how we're working across the wider early help system and hoping to develop a learning and development plan. So the kinds of things we're looking at there are what are the skills and knowledge and techniques that all practitioners would need to know, whether they worked in housing or in early years or in health, and developing plans to go along. So things like briefings on signs of safety so that people are comfortable with the different language and approaches that we might use when we're meeting to talk about children and families. As I've already mentioned, Start for Life is one of the streams within Family Hubs, and there was a requirement for us to publish a Start for Life offer, which we have done. The small diagrams to the right of this are actually an A5 postcard with lots of QR codes on it, which are handed out now to families. But we also have a full Start for Life offer published on the website. And also during the year, we developed and produced a new maternity and early years strategy and plan, which updated the priority 1 Best Start in Life priority under the Children and Families Partnership Plan, and that's due to be published shortly. We had some funding to commission a couple of small projects during the year. And one of the first that we prioritised was called Maternity Champions. And that was based on some data coming out of health, which showed a higher death rate amongst mothers and infants from Black and Asian communities, and particularly in particular areas of Leicestershire. And this was due to late take-up of bookings or not booking into midwifery services. So we wanted to do some work in those particular communities, and we commissioned an organisation called Heads Up, previously known as the Centre for Fun and Families, to go and do some discovery work to find out what the barriers were and what we could potentially do about it. So it also links into take-up of early years services. We're now at a period, we did that discovery period. We've been working across the partnership and with community groups where we're training up maternity champion volunteers. We have a very good volunteer programme within our service, within Family Help, and already have 160 volunteers across the county. So this is adding in to the service that we already run. So we're training those volunteers in the next few weeks, and then they'll be going out in their community to help talk about the importance of maternity services and particularly healthcare during pregnancy. And just briefly on some other work completed, so we also commissioned GATE, which is the Gypsy and Traveller Equalities Organisation, again looking at barriers to those particular communities accessing services. We've also done some amazing work with them around reducing parental conflict, so all of their staff have been trained to deliver that work, and some really fascinating insights from members of the community about their understanding of the parental conflict work and how they've really taken that on board. So we've had some really good results with that. We commissioned Quorum, which is a national evaluation organisation. They've been working with us on a theory of change. We're just now looking at some interim findings as they evaluate us. It's a process evaluation rather than outcomes, because this is all about being a process of transformation. So we'll have a report from them in September. We've been able to open an additional community fridge, so used a small amount of our capital funds to purchase a container, essentially a metal shed, that we can run another community fridge from, because our data was saying that that was a problem in that particular area. So that is now open. As I've mentioned, we've also done quite a lot of improvements to buildings and signage. Our next steps, as far as we can, throughout this process, we've been embedding as business as usual. So I've mentioned about the maternity champions is now part of our volunteer service. So we've embedded that. The website development is well underway, and we're looking at how we create a post to support that in an ongoing way through redistribution of our resources, and we'll continue to add to that website. And although our project manager is currently in post until the end of September, we do have plans of how the work will be picked up by our team of partnership managers in the localities to make sure that the end of the funding isn't the end of the Family Hub's work that we're doing. And as I've mentioned, our evaluation should be published by October. That was everything.
Thank you very much, Ellie. Really good report. And Mrs. Taylor, did you want to add anything?
I just really want to say thank you to Ellie and all her team there. She's done amazing work over the past year, and I think I've had the best year ever, opening all the family hubs, seeing all the families and children, and actually getting out and visiting every single family hub that we have. So it's been a really good year for us, I think, and some real positive outcomes. So I just wanted to put on record my thanks to Ellie and her team.
Thank you. Now I open it up to anybody. Mrs. Jordan.
Thank you for the report. That was really good. It was really interesting, and I'm really excited about the family hubs. But I went out to try and find a family hub local to me, and I rang up and I was told the nearest one was Huncut, which is quite a little way away. I went out there, and the ladies were really supportive, really positive, but there was no families there, and I was just not quite sure how many people are actually using the family hubs. Do you have a lot of families through? And the other thing was, my division is Blaby and Glen Parva. The only family hub I was told was in Blaby Library, I went there and they didn't know anything about, but they knew a little bit about it, but they said they hadn't got any leaflets, they weren't sure what they were supposed to be doing. And, you know, I think the families in my division need somewhere where they can actually go and get the support that they need. Is there going to be anything like that developed around locally to me?
Would like to take that up first. Ellie, and then
I'm sorry that you didn't have a good experience at Blaby Library. We have done a lot of training with library staff, and they're all equipped with our Family Hub's website. So I will pick that up beyond this and talk to them. Perhaps we need a little more training. So I'll have a look at that. In terms of the buildings, they are very well used. We do have published opening hours for each building. They're not all open the same hour, but we make that information available to families. And what's going on in a building really depends on the need in a particular area. So we do have 19 stay and play sessions running around the county every single week, and they're very well attended, generally between 10 and 20 families attending each one, so they're quite high numbers. That's part of our universal offer. So within Family Hubs, there is obviously our referral only offer, which is part of Family Help, where we provide group work and casework and a lot of support to families. But we have worked hard to develop our universal offer, which is something that families can just turn up to. So they're well advertised on the Family Hubs website. Things like the Stay and Play, which are supported by our volunteers. We also have a growing number of, they're often described as wellbeing cafes, which again parents can drop into, and sometimes we will have partner agencies dropping in as well to give advice and support to families. We have send parent support groups which run every month in every area, which are things again that parents can attend when they want to. They're very well attended. We have send young people's groups. I could go on, I'm sorry, I don't want to bore you with an endless list. So there's a lot of activity in a lot of the buildings, but there won't be constant activity in every building because our staff are out also doing casework and home visits and other things.
Thank you. Yeah, I was trying to find, anything local to Blaby or Glenparva, and I just couldn't find anything. I looked on the website, I didn't know where else to look, because, I felt that the families in my division didn't have anywhere to go or didn't know where to go or what to do really to get the help.
Jane.
Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge because if we were to open a hub in every area, that would be a huge number of buildings. And I think one of the things, whilst Ellie's presentation has described the kind of hubs in terms of building model, actually the family hubs model is so much more than buildings. So your constituents will be able to access all of the resources on the website. If they are in need of some more targeted support, they can come through our front door and be assessed. They're more than welcome to attend the Blaby Family Hub Library. They're more than welcome to attend the one in Braunston Town. So there are a number of big, but we knew when we opened the family hubs that we would not be opening any more buildings. There was no more funding for buildings. And actually, we think we've got the right number of buildings in terms of, as Ellie said, what's the need, what's the kind of level of demand, and we can support people in accessing those open buildings. So there is provision for people within your constituency. It may not be that there is a hub right in the area, but actually that would be hundreds and hundreds of hubs if we were to do that across Leicestershire. So there is access to provision. My advice would be that people do have a look on the website, do have a look at what is available, and if they're in need of any more help that isn't available, then they can come through our front door and they can access support that way as well.
I suppose, Mrs. Jo, I know you're a fairly new councillor, so it'll take you a little while to get to know your area a bit better, but I think you're probably talking about really localised stuff within a small village. I suppose that's more sort of under the parish councils tend to have information on their website about really localised groups that families can do. This is more of a overarching across the whole of Leicestershire. So, I suppose it's our role as local councillors and champions for our local areas to help residents navigate that. So I have been promoting family hubs for the last year across everywhere that I've possibly been. So I suppose that's your role as a councillor. But I mean, I've just gone on the website every Tuesday at Huncote, 10 to half 11 is Big Fun for Little Ones. So it's all on the Family Hub's website. If you go and have a look at that, you'll be able to help your families to get to know where they are. But I suppose I'm getting a sense you're talking about two different things here. So the Family Hub is more targeted work and people can drop in, whereas you were saying a little village, there'll be lots of little groups happening that are probably more localised. On a parish council website, you'd probably be able to find that information out.
It's the whole division, you know. It's two big villages, Blaby and Glenparva. You know, they're not a little village, and to go to Huncote, it's not going you know, there aren't any buses. It's not easy to get to Huncote from Blaby, or they're definitely not from Glenparva. So
there's a hub in Blaby,
a library and I've been to the library and they don't know anything.
Have you looked on the website? Have you gone on the website?
Yeah.
I don't think that's right.
Okay.
I think there is stuff on. I've just checked again. Tuesday the 4th of June, 1:30 till 2:30, Tip Top Talkers Workshop. So there are stuff going on in Huncote Family Hub, but the libraries are more of a spoke rather than a hub. But there will be stuff in your local area that is really localised in specific areas rather than it being a hub. But we do outreach work for targeted families, but not universal offer for every single family in every single area. We just haven't got the resources to do that. So if there's specific things that parents want to go to, they are available.
To assist Mrs. Jordan a bit more, is it possible that after this meeting there could be a little bit of a chat how it actually works? There's the hub and then there are the spokes, and then it's using the websites and things like that. Jane.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the point you've raised around Blaby is really valid. And as Ellie said, we will look into that, because the whole idea is that we've got a number of hubs across the county that we, where we utilise existing buildings. We were never going to be in a position where we were going to have to be able to have a hub in every area. So part of the idea of having a broad service was developing those spokes or hubs in libraries as well. And as Ellie said, it is really disappointing that you didn't get the response that's needed. That isn't the response that people get when they go into our libraries. So Ellie will pick that up to make sure she understands, we understand what happened there, why they weren't able to kind of really celebrate the fact that they're a family hub, which is the fact that our libraries have agreed to, kind of be family hubs is really brilliant, because it means that we're able to spread a lot more of the access. So we will pick that up. But there is a family hub in your area. It is in Blaby. It's just that you didn't get the response that we would have wanted you to have had, and we completely acknowledge that. But the family hubs are also the website. So there's a whole range of information that people can access on the website as well, which provides advice and support and all sorts of things. But they're not physical activities that they can get to. But the concept of the hub model across the county is that there are buildings in some areas. The website is available for everybody. The libraries offers some of the support. And that there are other, as Mrs. Taylor said, there are other community activities that maybe run at a different level as well. But very deliberately, that there aren't buildings in every area, because it's not serviceable, nor is it needed as well. But we will pick up the issue around Blaby as well.
Mr. Frisbee.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, I'd like to thank Ellie for another nicely presented report. I particularly like the 80s blockbusters type infographics. Brought me back to the golden age of Bob Holness, but it was nice to see that. In contradiction to Mrs. Jordan, I apologise, Mrs. Jordan's experience of the hub has not been the same as ours, but I think the project's been a lifeline in Melton Mowbray that I represent. Venture House, I go down to there. It's a blur of activity. It's nice to see the building being purposed and actually being used. And if anything else, it creates a a centre against a somewhat moribund backdrop of activity for children and parents. And in many ways, what it's also provided is the fact that we get a little bit of what we call capital off the back of it, in respect that they might go in for one reason and actually be re-signposted out and address multiple reasons or other issues. And we notice a lot of family issues have got inextricably linked problems, and it's nice that they can go there perhaps just for a bit of tumble and play, but actually come back and find out about things like that, the Household Support Fund. So we've found it to be very, very useful. So I think there's good argument to suggest the quality of what you're seeing and the activity and the engagement might be down to the day you drop in and what's happening at that specific time. But I think it's a fantastic project and very much needed. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Fred. Mr. Hills.
Thank you, Chair. And also thank you to the lead member for inviting me to my hub opening in Barwell. It was very well attended, and I've spoken to people in villages across my division after, and they've all said positive things about the hub. I think if you are in need and you're going to use this sort of service, you don't want to be going to a dozen different buildings and websites and this and that. So a one-stop shop, as you described it, is absolutely essential. You've sat there and almost limited yourself in the number of things that the hubs do as well, and all the different programs that you offer. And you said you don't want to bore us. But my question is sort of, where do we go from here? Because we do know that the department has a limited budget, you know, a stretched budget, and the funding from the government is coming to an end now. So what does business as usual mean? Because, you know, we want to develop these and expand them and make them even better. You know, but we're crossing several different domains. We've got an in-person offering, we've got referral services, we've got a website. And so my first question is kind of, where do we see it going over the next 12 months, 24 months?
Thank you. Jane.
Yes, thank you. So, I mean, as you've highlighted, it was one-off funding that we were given in order to develop the family hubs. But as Ellie described in her presentation, the funding was very much around kind of startup and infrastructure, and that funding has enabled us to develop the concept of family hubs, to develop the material, the kind of branding, the website, all of that kind of thing. And we always knew that the funding was one-off funding. So at the beginning of the programme, we were working to build it into business as usual. And I think what we need to be clear about is when we talk about business as usual, it doesn't mean that then stands still. As with all of the business across the department, we continue to develop it to meet the needs of children and families across Leicestershire. So what we've managed to do, and Ellie and her team have very skillfully done this, is that we have developed the family hubs model that means that we can sustain it from within our existing budgets. So what that means is that we are utilising some of our existing staff to run the buildings. We've changed some of the way that we deliver things. We've got a website that's up and running now. So we're able to continue. There isn't going to be a cliff edge when the money ends. And we're able to continue the delivery of the family hubs model as part of our broader family help model, that will mean that families across Leicestershire can continue to access it. In terms of what's next, I mean, I know Ellie's highlighted some of them, but I think some of the what next is about continuing to develop our services that mean that we're delivering according to the needs of our children and families across Leicestershire. So that's bringing in some of the innovative work through the care review that we talked about in the previous item, but also thinking about what are the emerging needs that are coming up. So the reducing parental conflict, for example, will always be something that we would want to be delivering, and Ellie's working closely with colleagues across the department around other things that we would want to include within our family hubs, but also across our broader family help as well.
Mr. Hunt. Oh, sorry, did you want to come back, Mr. Hunt?
And then I'll to Mr. Question as well for Max. And I suppose as well, I don't know if I'm right in saying, Jane, but now we've got the hubs in place, is it easier to get grants in the future and other partnerships and things like that? That's just a side point. My second question was more around the website as well. I do think the website's fantastic. It's informative, it's interactive, it's very well branded. And there's a great amount of resources on there for national guidelines, whether it's going to the government websites or charity websites, whatever it may be. One way I think we could develop it a bit more is have more local people on there. You know, yes, you've got the search box and there's a little map where all the hubs are, and there's a drop down bit for all the activities that are going on, but there's no real pictures of local people. There's no descriptions from local moms and dads about how they've used it. There's not I don't think there's that many pictures of the hubs themselves and things like that. So I could see people from Hertfordshire or Scotland or wherever using our website because it's so good, but it's not very Leicestershire branded, if that makes sense. I mean, the branding is excellent, it's great, but it's not very rooted in Leicestershire.
Yeah, thank you. I'll let Ellie pick up the stuff on the website, although Ellie does appear on the website and she certainly is a Leicestershire resident. And actually there are videos of tours of all the hubs, but Ellie will pick up the kind of website and branding. Just in terms of grants and partnership, I think the eligibility for grants is always relatively limited as a local authority. Although I think what it will enable us to do is to think about how we can apply for different pots of money that enable us to deliver projects. But it's always a challenge for Leicestershire to kind of secure additional funding through grants. But notwithstanding that, we would still attempt to. Partnerships, I think, is a really good point. And as part of Ellie's presentation, obviously, she set out where we've been. I mean, I think the range of partnerships that Ellie and her team have developed through the hubs has been phenomenal. And that will only continue to be developed. So, kind of inviting more partners to utilise the hubs and make them really good multi-agency partnerships. So that will just continue. And I'll hand over to Ellie to talk about the website and the kind of potential updates as well.
Thank you. So as Jane has mentioned, we do have introductory videos to guide people around some of the buildings, and that's something that we're continuing to do. So at the moment, we're doing more filming with local organisations to talk a little bit about their services. We're doing that to support the workforce, but also families. So we're having more and more videos of a health visitor saying, this is what a health visitor does, this is what it would be like to come to an appointment. So we're having quite a focus on that, but then also more self-help as well. So getting local service providers to talk about things that families might like to try themselves before they ask for further help. So we have that all planned in the next couple of months to do a little bit more on. But we also continue with our partnership work. So just last week, we've been in discussions with the GP practice in Melton about them having a medical presence at some of our stay and play groups to be a source of information and support to parents, which will be absolutely fantastic if we're able to do that, which I think we can. And it will hopefully also help GPs cut down the number of unnecessary appointments. So it's not always thinking about more money, but it's thinking about different ways to deliver things and how we continue with that partnership to really get best value for everything that we do and making sure that that's meeting families' needs. So there's an awful lot there for us to work on, and it all feels quite exciting things that we're starting to talk about. I think the other positive from the funding that we've had is that the DfE have been really pleased with the progress we've made in Leicestershire and have cited us as examples of good practice in various areas of our work. And, if there were to be further funding in the future, I think that this experience stands us in very good stead if there was a future policy direction that looked similar.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hunt.
We go. This is something that's really made me cross on this committee because a certain amount of corporate heft over this. It's money we've got and something new. We don't hear about anything else the department does, just about family hubs, and yet, I still haven't got a clue what they are. It sounds sometimes like citizens' advice, sometimes it sounds like a play group, sometimes it sounds like a sort of online library, loads of those. You can just Google anything. So I'm a skeptic, obviously. There's 16 libraries involved in the report. I did the same as other people have done. I've gone to my local library and I didn't have a clue what it was. I was told to go along to Wrigley Readers as a library function. And I just wonder whether library staff have been given the time to fulfill this new role, whether they've been given training, whether they've given some sort of promotion, is it just an extra thing we're asking them to do? So, and I have to say, maybe it's the language that's being spoken here. You know, I'm a lay person. It's not my walk of life. Although you'd think it should be if you know, you're an elected person working in the community that I do all the time. I thought the presentation though was more about what I would say inputs rather than outputs. So all the things that we're doing, but not things that I could see as a community worker, as a councillor, and so on. And you know, I think at one point you said, I thought it was very heartening. You said we're looking at different ways of doing things. I think you were talking that in the context of health, but it could be now that's a role that they could be aimed at doing, because you know we do need all the time to think of innovation in social situations, social. But then I wondered, what has been done to make something that we have been doing better, and what new things are we doing that we weren't doing before that we should be doing, and keeping our feet on the ground. But for the time being, please don't do any more publicity about family hubs until we know what they are.
Well, that's a bit of a challenge, thanks.
Well,
So anyway, I'll move to Mrs. Tate.
that's what we're here for.
I suppose I join you getting a little bit cross, Max, because I've been banging on about this for the past year and explained it multiple times to you about what a family hub is. So no, I won't stop going on about family hubs, because that's my role to do that and champion children and families and the department and the support for our children and families with Cross Leicestershire. You mentioned sometimes you think it's a playgroup, sometimes you think it's citizen advice, sometimes you think it's an online library. I think you're right in all of those, because that's what it is, a one-stop shop where families can go to get any advice they need in supporting their children and families. I take your point about the libraries. I think that is, and it's an issue that I've raised myself, that they probably do need some more training, but it's fairly new. So it hasn't been a promotion, it's just assisting us to get that information out there to families. So I do take your point that probably library staff do need a bit more. And we've got an evaluation coming out, I think in October, about the impact of family hubs. So once we get that in October, you'll see the impact of that. Me personally, because this is my role, have spoken to multiple families and I've listened to their voice and what family hubs mean to them. And I wish I could share that with you, but I can't share that with you. But you have to take my word for it, that they have said without the support of the family hubs and the staff there, their families would have split up. They would have had children taken into care. They would have not been able to be where they are today. So I've seen that at the front end, because that's my role, but I can't share those stories with you because it's private for those families. But you just have to take my word for that. And I think I have offered to you to come out with you to visit a family hub when there's an event on, so you can see exactly what they do. So I'm still waiting for you to take that offer on. But, you know, I would suggest that you're the only person that has ever said to me, what's a family hub? Everyone else seems to understand it apart from you. So either you don't want to understand it. I don't know what more I can explain to you about what a family hub is, but I will not stop going on about family hub because it's fantastic. We got £1 million worth of money into Leicestershire, and we've done this amazing work for the past year, and you will see the impact of that in our evaluation that comes out in October. So maybe after October, once you've read the evaluation, if you've got any further questions on what you think a family hub is or what you think the impact might be, then we can probably have a conversation then. But I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Did any of the other officers, Jane?
Yeah, it was just to pick up your last point around, you know, kind of what's been done to make, because obviously these kind of initiatives have been in place for many, many years. I think the benefit of Family Hubs, and what Family Hubs has done, is continue to have a really strong focus on early years and getting it right in early years. The difference with the Family Hubs model is that it has stretched it across all of childhood, essentially, and expanded it to families. So it's built on the excellence of Sure Start, of children's centres, of all of the pre-initiatives. It's almost added even more impetus on us as a department to be thinking whole family, and also to be thinking across the ages. And the fact that we've got a really strong focus still from central government and locally on getting it right early on for families is so fundamentally important. And I think Family Hubs are everything. They're a really broad concept. They are delivered through services, through centres, sorry. They are all of the services that we've described as well. They really are almost whatever they need to be for families. And I think, it's testament to what's been achieved across the department that means that we are delivering such a broad offer for our families across a really broad age, and that focus on, kind of adolescents as well as our 0 to 5-year-olds as well. So they are really exciting, and the money that we got through government to enable us to do it has meant that we've been able to really inject some of that broader family service and early help for families. I mean, I think we do share detail about a range of services across the department, and just on the committee agenda today, we've brought you a paper on our children in care and care leavers, which is a very different cohort of people who through the Family Hub. So I think we do share information of all of the services that we deliver across the department. We've very deliberately profiled Family Hubs because the money that we've had has been about building the infrastructure and building the comms around it as well. But they are one of many services that are delivered across the department, which obviously we bring reports here to Overview Scrutiny to share as well.
I'm grateful for the response made, particularly from Debbie Taylor, who's obviously done a lot of work on this, and if I just pick up that particular example of she described a couple perhaps who were involved in a conflict situation and in danger of wrecking a family one way or another. How would that have been approached previously to a Family Hub? The Family Hub is the agency that solved that problem. But what would it have done before the Family Hub was invented? Surely there would be agencies.
As another layperson, they may not well have come or gone to an agency per se. I was at, I won't say where, it was in Leicestershire. I'll speak to Ellie afterwards. I was at a place yesterday that had been started as a community group, and I wasn't really very familiar with the phraseology play and stay. And for those, I'm sure everybody around here understands, but what it means is it's play area, but the parents or carers stay with the child. And that has proven, that's only been going for a year or two. And it's in a parish building, own building. It's for youngster babies. There's a cafe attached, and to get to the cafe, you have to walk through the children's area. And they've said, I was there in the morning, and it wasn't supposed to be open till about 10:30 for either things. By 10:20, there were 20 children and their parents or carers, some grandparents with their children. The cafe was open, and what they said was they were able to link things together. Now, I don't know whether this is one of our hubs or not. If it's not, I will speak to Ellie and say this is a place. But it was just, well, we were only supposed to stay half an hour, and we were there for an hour, and they've got outside out. But that meant, and what they said was, and the person I spoke to in the cafe said, is how I perceive a family hub to work, that the people that were running the cafe got to know about something else happening in that village affecting someone else who had children. So it was a circle. So I see the hub as here. I think the picture, the chart on page 37 should, you get the hub, which to me is like the hub of a wheel. And then from that come the various spokes to the various places. Now, that's how I see them. In other words, it's communities helping each other with a backing behind them of a bigger place that they can go to. And so, sorry to interrupt. I know you wanted to speak, to reply to Mr. Hunt.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That's a really good description of what the family hubs do. I think in relation to the specific question of what services these families or the families who are accessing the family hubs where they would have got a service from before, is that many of them would still have received a service. The difference is their journey to receiving that service. So they may have had to only access services when things had escalated and they'd come to the attention of services, rather than them being able to access in an early preventative way support for themselves. And the other part is that they, as a family, and often families with a variety of needs of the individuals, would have had to go to lots of different places to access lots of different services for that family. So what the family hubs do is they give a central point where families can come to one place, they or parents can come to one place, and they can access that support, hopefully at a right time and right service, so earlier prevention, because we know all the evidence shows us that the earlier we get involved with children and families who are experiencing issues that require additional beyond universal services support, the earlier that support's in place, the more success at moving those families successfully on to being able to manage without additional services. So the family hub enables them to come to one place to access that support early, and the services are there for people to link them in rather than them to have to go to many areas. So a number of those families would before have still received a service, but only when problems escalated, when things were more difficult and in crisis. And as I say, the journey to receiving those services, their experience would have been different. What the hubs do is enable us to get that support in, and as Jane described earlier, to put that support in right up to the older age, young people, so that we've got that variety of need and we can meet it in one place. And that for me is the difference that the hub brings.
Just like to thank you for that answer. And if we can do more early intervention and joined up working, that's excellent, and it would be a great product if we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Well, that's been, I don't see any more hands. That's been a very open and frank discussion with following your report, and thank you very much indeed. We now move on to finalise, the item 12, which is the quarter 23-24 performance report, which is page 51 to 60. And I think, yes, Sharon is taking us through this. Thank you very much, Sharon.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll start, and Jane is going to take over when we get to the education data. So the report, the performance report, quarterly performance report, as committee knows, comes here to present the key performance indicators that are very much part of our Children and Family Services departmental plan. The difference to note for today's report is that, building on the comments and discussion that took place at committee previously, we have attempted to include more detail within the performance report about the actual work that's going on within the department, with a view that this time we're spotlighting those services that sit within my portfolio around the targeted early help and children's social care, youth and justice. And at the next meeting, that spotlight will be on the education and effectiveness SEND early years part of the department. So in paragraph 5, it informs the committee that from all of the data, those where there's a national benchmark, and there are 11 measures that are reported around that have a national benchmark, Leicestershire sits in the top quartile for 1, 4 are in the second quartile, 4 are in the third, and 2 are in the fourth quartile. And then moving on, paragraph 6 onwards is some of the more detailed information that we wanted to spotlight for the committee this time. So paragraph 6 outlines the new structure for family help and family safeguarding. So this was one area of development coming out of Stable Homes Built on Love, which is about asking authorities to look at early intervention, to look at how we collectively look at the right services at the right time for children and families at that early stage of additional needs being identified, and asking us to consider for those children assessed to be children in need that historically have been worked predominantly solely by social work staff, how did we pull in our alternatively qualified staff and the vast resource and wealth of skill and experience we have with our alternative qualified staff to work together alongside social care to provide that support to those children and families. So in February, after an extensive period of a pilot, we launched our new family help and family safeguarding model. So the family help side of the service brings together those services and resources that sat within our children and family wellbeing service and some resource from our social work part of the service, and have brought those services together to look at how we continue to provide a targeted family help to those families who require early help services, but in addition to what would be provided by universal services, and then those children and families who are assessed to be children in need. And within the model, we have social workers. So if an assessment for children in need is still completed by a qualified social worker, if the level of need within that child in need plan requires a social worker to continue to be the direct source of work and involvement with the family, a social worker is involved. If, however, the level of need of that family would be best met by an alternatively qualified member of staff, so it could be a youth worker, it could be a key worker who has got intensive experience of family work, then they can be allocated to that child. But we've established a post that's called a senior social worker overview worker, and they meet the family with the alternative qualified worker They chair the Child in Need meetings, and they have that overview and oversight of the plans. So it is still meeting our regulations and duties about having social work input, but it's opened up a wealth of experience and skill set of alternatively qualified staff who can work alongside social workers in family help. And it then means our family safeguarding teams, who are the social work teams or our social work teams, concentrate on the work for those children who are children in need of protection, or they are children where we're going through proceedings because we feel that the local authority needs to share parental responsibility for those children. So those teams are now well established. Children are with the right service, receiving the right level of service, and the feedback, the early feedback, because we're monitoring the progress of this model and structure, both in data but also by quality, and the feedback is really positive, and positive in feedback from families and other professionals as well, because it's enabled us to offer in that early intervention stage more intensive support to those children and families. Then over the page, we talk about, we've listed for you the implementation and the work that we've been doing. So our public law outline is our work when the local authority makes the decision that we need to intervene in a family's life for a legal order. So it can either be we want to intervene and work with them because we're saying to a family we are really concerned about something, and if we can't work together with you to resolve the risk to the children, we may have to go to court. So that's the pre-proceeding stage, or we go into proceedings where we're going to court and asking the court for overview of a case. So we have done quite a lot of work around the PLO, quite a lot of work around our mosaic systems to be able to manage that data and track those children. And we are focused on having trialing a case progression officer, which is a post that successfully worked in other authorities that helps us for those children that are going through proceedings to make sure there is no delay and the right things are in place for those children. We have been successful in a bid to be part of the Department of Education pre-case management pilot. So that is work when those children are in pre-proceedings, and that's something that we've just started our work with the Department of Education on. In March, 14 members of our Children in Care Council, our Beacon Choir, attended a residential at Bow Manor. It was a time for the children and young people to come together to look at key areas of how their voice is heard and they influence the work of the department and the service, but also they undertook some training around equality, diversity and inclusion. So it's very much part of helping our children and young people see the importance of that work, the role they play in it, but they are also part of, for example, interview panels for us. So it's important that they are there to champion not only their own voice, but that of other children in care and care leavers. In March, we also implemented a new system within first response duty, so that we were looking at how we can strengthen our processes within the screening. So the paragraph 10 outlines the detail of that work and the success we've had in further strengthening what was a robust service, but actually further strengthening that work in first response. And paragraph 11 refers to family hubs. So obviously we've had a detailed discussion about the work of family hubs. Paragraph 12, in short breaks, we've been and are running a pilot for families where children they want to apply for short breaks for their children, so it's really the lower level short breaks, and we've been looking at a pilot that takes the bureaucracy out of that process and tries to take away from families who will require a very lower level short break having to jump through a lot of hurdles and have big assessments to access that support. So this is very much, we've worked with the SEND, with the Parents and Carers Forum, to actually look at this pilot and how families can go on the system and be able to request in a more straightforward way those lower level short breaks, and up to date we've had a number of families that have done this self-assessment and are reporting back very positively on how they're finding that. And then in April, we met, our Youth and Justice team met with the Youth Justice Board for an oversight meeting where they looked at our performance around youth and justice. And as you can see from paragraph 14, they reported back very positively on the work and performance of our Youth and Justice Service. So that is really positive. So those paragraphs hopefully give you that more detailed insight to some of the performance activity that's been taking place in this last quarter. And then paragraph 15 onwards gives you the detail of some of the key performance. So it takes you through the percentage of child protection cases that were reviewed within timescale. So obviously you can see that is an improving picture. The percentage of children becoming subject to a child protection plan for a second or subsequent time is an area that continues to be a focus for us. It's an area that we're not alone in across authorities, of making sure that we want that figure, that percentage, to be as low as possible. But to give you the detail, because we audit such children to make sure we can learn from why there is a second or further period of child protection, and you can see that the numbers of children behind that percentage are relatively low, and you can see in paragraph 18 that in March that was actually 3 families. So a small, because of our numbers of children on child protection plan are relatively stable, it only takes a small number of families, especially if those families have a higher number of children within them, to make that percentage figure higher. But it continues to be an area for us, and positively in the audit that was taking place in the period that we're reporting on, there was a small number of those plans were within 2 years of the previous period of planning. So we do look at whether it's for similar circumstances that they're on a plan for the second time, and what the time period between those plans are. Percentage of re-referrals to children's social care is also something that we monitor. That is currently at 24%. Our target is to get that to about 22%, would see us in one of the better performing authorities. Percentage of assessments that are completed within 45 days, that is at 88.6%. So that is just very similar to what it was in the last quarter. Over the page, we give the details in paragraph 21 on those child protection plans that have lasted 2 years or more. So again, we would work towards that being we would want that to be a low percentage, and it is a low percentage in the numbers that we have on plans for that period of time. Then the work around our care leavers, so care leavers in suitable accommodation, those in education, employment or training, and those in contact. Kelda in her report went through some of the detail, the quality detail around the work in this particular area, but as you can see, our performance and percentage performances are positive and are strong in those areas. And then for paragraph 24 to 25, which is around health assessments and dental checks, although we would strive to continue to get those figures higher, you can see that we are increasing quarter on quarter, and are doing a lot of work with colleagues in health about ensuring access to our children in care, access to dentists, and to ensure that they have their health assessments. Moving on, within the report, that there has been some system changes to Capita and Synergy, so it's not possible to report for this particular quarter the total number of families that have been worked by Targeted Family Health. So that's the service that was formerly Children and Family Wellbeing, but we have given the data for quarter 3, so you can see there the number that the numbers, the types of numbers of children and individuals and at family level that we work with. So I'll hand over to Jane to take you through early years and education, and then happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sharon. So just moving on to paragraph 28, you can see that the number of children in mainstream schools with an education, health and care plan continues to rise. Currently, we've got 6,677 open education, health and care plans. The numbers at paragraph 8 are those with an education, health and care plan in mainstream schools. The number of children in mainstream schools who don't have an EHCP but do have SEND support, again, continues to rise. There were 12,968 at the spring term, which is 389 higher than we had in the autumn term of this school year. And again, you can see that the spring term this year is the highest recorded numbers, both for SEND support, but also for education, health and care plans as well. In terms of the early years data in spring, so the most recent data shows that 71.2% of our eligible 2-year-olds took up their funded place. This is a decrease from the autumn term. It's not unusual that there is a decrease in the spring term compared to the autumn term. But you can see that for 3-year-olds, the figure was 89.8%. Again, a decrease from the autumn term, but again, not unusual. But overall, 97.3% of our eligible 2- and 3-year-olds did take up their fee place for the spring term, which is a slight increase on the previous term, which again is really positive. In terms of accessing good quality education for children to achieve their maximum potential, the percentage of primary schools rated good or outstanding was 90%, which represents no change from the previous quarter. In terms of secondary schools, there was 77.8% of our secondary schools are rated good or outstanding, and again, no change from the previous quarter. And the percentage of pupils who are educated in good or outstanding schools is now at 85.9%, which is a slight increase from quarter 3. We are seeing an increase in the number of children who are electively home educated. You can see in paragraph 13, there are now 1,176 children who are electively home educated, which is a significant increase compared to the quarter 4 last year. We know that the trend is driven by 2 factors. One is a parental choice, a kind of lifestyle choice for children and families. But another factor that comes up regularly is ongoing health concerns for the children and regular concerns around safety and other things. We do continue to monitor the numbers, but also monitor those children who are electively home educated as well. The percentage of children and young people in Leicestershire who are not in education, so that's the 16, 17-year-olds who are not in education, employment or training, was 0.8%. It's a slight increase from the previous quarter, which was 0.7%. We are seeing an increase in the number of permanent exclusions from Leicestershire schools across the county. Whilst they're still low in Leicestershire, we are starting to see a rise from some schools in terms of permanent exclusions. And you can see that for the 22-23 academic year, we were at 0.07, and in previous years we were at 0.05. So we are low in Leicestershire. We don't regularly exclude children, but we are seeing a worrying trend of increases in permanent exclusions, and we are seeing again an increase in the numbers of children who are receiving at least one fixed term exclusion from Leicestershire schools. And again, you can see that's about a 25% increase from the previous academic year, and the numbers are set out there in paragraph 41. The department does continue to monitor that and actually monitors the permanent exclusions on an individual basis, and will speak to schools where they do make permanent exclusions as well. And that's all I'll pull out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Did you want to come back on anything, Mrs. Taylor?
No, nothing from me. Thank you, Chair.
Very full, clear report. Very detailed. Thank you very much. And to all of you, I now come to item 13. The next meeting of the committee is scheduled to take place on 3rd of September. And then the rest of the meetings for 2025 are detailed on your agenda. And thank you very much indeed. And I just state, as I stated at the beginning of the meeting, I do have no urgent matters. So thank you very much for attending, and safe journey home. Thank you.